Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tiriyat Nashtaprayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, Chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, text 118 onwards. Aparayam itastanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiv bhuta baho yayedam dharite jagat. So this shloka is from Bhagavad Gita. Besides these inferior energies of mighty armed Arjun, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is explained that the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, constitute the gross energy of the absolute truth. And that there are also 3 subtle energies, namely the mind, intelligence, and false ego, or identification with the phenomenal world. Thus, the entire cosmic manifestation is divided into 8 energies, all of which are inferior. Inferior with respect to the superior soul, spiritual energy. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Mam Maya Duratyaya, the inferior energy known as Maya is so strong that although the living entity does not belong to this energy, due to the superior strength of the inferior energy, the living entity, Jivabhuta, forgets his real position and identifies with it. It's so strong, Maya is so strong. Although we are, or the living entity is beyond this, but in material world, Maya is very, very strong. So it gets covered over by the material energy. Krishna says distinctly that beyond the material energy, there is a superior energy, which is known as Jiva Bhuta or living entities. When in contact with the material energy, this superior energy conducts all the activities of the entire material phenomenal world. The supreme cause is Krishna, Janmadhyasya Yata, who is the origin of all energies, which work variously. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has both inferior and superior energies, and the difference between them is that the superior energy is factual, whereas the inferior energy is a reflection of the superior. Inferior energy, Maya, is a reflection of the superior. But still the reflection is so strong. A reflection of the sun in a mirror or on water appears to be the sun, but it is not. Similarly, the material world is but a reflection of the spiritual world. Although it appears to be factual, it is not. It's only a temporary reflection. Whereas the spiritual world is a factual reality. Material world with its gross and subtle forms is merely a reflection of the spiritual world. It's merely a reflection. So it is, it's only a temporary reflection. And can we imagine, although it is temporary reflection, it is not superior, but still it is so engrossing, it is encapturing that we don't want to get out of it. The living entity is not a product of the material energy, he is spiritual energy, but in contact with matter, he forgets his identity. Thus, the living entity identifies himself with matter and enthusiastically engages in material activities in the guises of a technologist, scientist, philosopher, and so on. He does not know that he is not at all a material product, but is spiritual. His real identity thus being lost, he struggles very hard in the material world, and the Hare Krishna movement or Krishna consciousness movement is trying to revive his original consciousness. His activities in manufacturing big skyscrapers are evidence of intelligence. But this kind of intelligence is not at all advanced. He should know that his only real concern is how to get free from material contact. For by absorbing his mind in material activities, he takes material bodies again and again. And although he falsely claims to be very intelligent, in material consciousness is not at all intelligent. Proper is amazing. Although he falsely claims to be very intelligent. I mean, if somebody is intelligent, why would he run after and waste all his life, energy, money, everything for something temporary? If somebody tells me, oh, I'm working on a project and tomorrow it will be, either it will be stopped or we have to put it on the shelf. Why would I work on that project? Why would I put all my energies to work on that project? But here, that's what we do. When we speak about the Krishna consciousness movement, which is meant to make people intelligent, the conditioned living entity, therefore, misunderstands. He is so engrossed in the material concept of life that he does not think there can be any activities that are actually based on intelligence, beyond the construction of skyscrapers and big roads and the manufacturing of cars. This is proof of Maya Pratagyan, or loss of all intelligence due to the influence of Maya. When a living entity is freed from such misconceptions, he is called liberated. When one is actually liberated, he no longer identifies with the material world. The symptom of mukti, or liberation, is that one engages in spiritual activities instead of falsely engaging in material activities. So that is a symptom of liberation. But spiritual activities, again, it's not something we're gonna imagine, oh, this is spiritual and that is spiritual, or we make our own spiritual activities. Spiritual activities means those given in the scriptures, not in our mind, material mind. Just like in New York, we were there, 22nd Avenue, first place where Prabhupada started the movement. Hippies would come, and the hippie time, that they would just smoke all kinds of drugs or take drugs, and then they feel high. They would obviously feel high was they had no control over their brains afterwards, and they would think this is spiritual. That is not spiritual. And these places like New York or other big cities, San Francisco, LA, or other big places, there is so much, I mean, variety of people we see. And they just have different conceptions. Like Saturday, we met one boy, and on his hand, he was an Indian body. On his hand, it was written Tattvam Asi. It was tattooed. And I said, wow, you're a spiritualist. He said, yes, Tattvam Asi, we all are one, we all are connected, and you will not understand it unless you are 40 years old. I'm just looking at his face. What is to make out of this? I mean, why 40? Why there is a cutoff line around 40 years? But they all have just different ideas. But one thing is, yes, because we are spirit souls, we want to find out the truth. We have this inner quest for truth, quest for enlightenment. But the problem is, if we don't have that agya sukriti, bank balance, then we'll go to wrong persons, cheaters, and then get cheated. But the quest is there, yes. So means those who have knowledge, they should preach more, distribute more books, so people can find the right path. That's all. Transcendental loving devotional service is a spiritual activity of the spirit soul. Mayavadi philosophers confuse such spiritual activity with material activity. But the Bhagavad Gita confirms, Mam chayo avyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Sagunan samtiti etan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in the spiritual activities of unalloyed devotional service, avyabhicharini bhakti, is immediately elevated to the transcendental platform, and he is to be considered Brahma Bhuta. Brahma Bhuta means he is at the transcendental platform, which indicates that he is no longer in the material world, but is in the spiritual world. Devotional service is enlightenment or awakening. When the living entity perfectly performs spiritual activities under the direction of the spiritual master, he becomes perfect in knowledge and understands that he is not God, but a servant of God. So, devotional service, as Prabhupada said, is enlightenment or awakening. So that's why Prabhupada always put down the word devotional service, not just devotion. So it's a service, and when we engage in those services, then we understand, I'm not God, I'm a servant of God. And not just a servant of God, actually, servant of God. And that's a real position. As explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityadas. The real identity of the living entity is that he is an eternal servant of Supreme. As long as one does not come to this conclusion, he must be in ignorance. This is also confirmed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita. Bahunam janmanamante jnanvan mam prapadyate. After many, many births of struggling for existence and cultivating knowledge, when one comes to the point of real knowledge, he surrenders unto me. Such an advanced Mahatma or great soul is very rarely to be seen. Thus, although the Mayavadi philosophers appear to be very much advanced in knowledge, they are not yet perfect. To come to the point of perfection, they must voluntarily surrender to Krishna. But they all they all believe, this is their conclusion, we all are God, we have forgotten we are God. We are God, and once we realize we are God, we'll become God. So that's not the correct conclusion. Further, it is said, Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetra Gyakya Tatha Para Avidya Karma Samagyaya Tritiya Shaktir Ishyate. The potency of Lord Vishnu is summarized in three categories, namely the spiritual potency, the living entity, and ignorance. The spiritual potency is full of knowledge. The living entities, although belonging to the spiritual potency, are subject to bewilderment. And the third energy, which is full of ignorance, is always visible in fruitive activities. So this is a quotation from Vishnu Purana. In the previous verse, quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, it has been established that the living entities are to be categorized among the Lord's potencies. The Lord is potent, and there are varieties of potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vividhe Vishruyate. So many energies. Now, in this quotation from the Vishnu Purana, this is further confirmed. There are varieties of potencies. They've also been divided into three categories, namely spiritual, marginal, and external. The spiritual potency is manifested in the spiritual world. Krishna's form, qualities, activities, and entourage are all spiritual. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Ajopi sannavyaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my spiritual potency, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Atma Maya refers to the spiritual potency. When Krishna comes to this or any other universe, he does so by his spiritual potency. We take birth by the force of the material potency. But as stated here, and with reference to Vishnu Puran, the Kshetragya or living entity belongs to the spiritual potency. Thus, when we free ourselves from the clutches of the material potency, we can also enter the spiritual world. So this is the whole crux of the matter, is how to free ourselves from the clutches of material potency so that we can get back into the spiritual world where we came from. So but for that, we have to have the right knowledge. The material potency is the energy of darkness, or complete ignorance of spiritual activities. In the material potency, the living entity engages himself in fruitive activities, thinking that he can be happy through expansion in terms of material energy. This fact is prominently manifest in this age of Kali, because human society, not understanding the spiritual nature, is busily expanding in material activities. The men of the present day are almost unaware of their spiritual identity. They think that they are products of the elements of material world, and that everything will end with the annihilation of the body. Therefore, they conclude that as long as one has a material body consisting of material senses, one should enjoy the senses as much as possible. Since they are atheists, they do not care whether there is next life. Such activities are described in this verse as avidya karma samgyaya. So avidya karma, all our activities are actually in the mode of ignorance. The first ignorance is, I am this body. And to give these senses as much pleasure as possible is the goal of life. That's not. The material energy is separated from the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, although it is originally created by the Supreme Lord, it is not actually present within it. The Lord also confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, Matasthani sarva bhutani. Everything is resting on me. This indicates that everything is resting on its own energy. For example, the planets are resting within the outer space, which is a separated energy of Krishna. So everything in the material world that we see is Krishna's energies. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, all together, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. The separated energy acts as if it were independent, where here it is said that although such energies are certainly factual, they're not independent, but merely separated. Bhinna prakriti rashtada. But the whole system, because he is complete, so everything that comes from him is also complete. It's just amazing how he has created everything. It looks so real, but they are separated energies. The separated energy can be understood from a practical example. I compose books by speaking into a dictaphone, and when the dictaphone is replayed, it appears that I'm speaking personally, but actually I'm not. I spoke personally, but then the dictaphone tape, which is separate from me, acts as exactly like me, or acts or speaks exactly like Brahma. Similarly, the material energy originally emanates from the Supreme Personality of God, but it acts separately, although the energy is supplied by the Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti. This material nature is working under my direction, son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and unmoving beings. So producing all moving and unmoving means it's giving the body, the covering. Soul does not come from material nature. But the process is so subtle that we think everything is coming from the material nature. Under the guidance of superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the material energy works as if independent, although it's not actually independent. So in this verse from Vishnu Puran, the total energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is classified in three divisions, namely the spiritual or internal potency of the Lord, the marginal potency or Kshetragya, the living entity, and the material potency, which is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and appears to act independently. When Srila Vyasadeva, by meditation and self-realization, saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also saw the separated energy of the Lord standing behind him. Apashyat Purusham Puranam Mayam Chatad Apashrayam. Vyasadeva also realized that it's this separated energy of the Lord, the material energy, that covers the knowledge of the living entities. So this is what Maya does. It covers us and throws us or keeps us in the material world. The separated material energy bewilders the living entities and thus they work very hard under its influence, not knowing that they're not fulfilling their mission in life. Unfortunately, most of them think that they are the body and should therefore enjoy the material senses irresponsibly, since when death comes, everything will be finished. And everything will be so finished that the person, if he is conscious, he is not in coma or something else, then he laments, why I have to leave. He begs the doctors, please give me a few more years. There's so many other things to do. This atheistic philosophy also flourished in India, where it was sometimes propagated by Charvaka Muni, who said, Rinam kritva ghritam pibet, yava jiveta sukham jivet. Bhasmi bhutasya dehasya uta punar agamanu bhavet. His theory was that as long as one lives, one should eat as much ghee as possible. In India, ghee or clarified butter is a basic ingredient in preparing many varieties of food. Since everyone wants to enjoy nice food, Charvak Muni advised that one eat as much ghee as possible. One may say, I have no money, how shall I purchase ghee? Charvak Muni, however, says, if you have no money, then beg, borrow, or steal. But in some way, secure ghee and enjoy life. So for one who further objects that he will be held accountable for such unauthorized activities as begging, borrowing, and stealing, Charvak Muni replies, you will not be held responsible. As soon as your body is burned to ashes, after death, everything is finished. So this was his understanding, his theory. But even if today somebody posts this Rinam Krita Kritam Pibet, because the words in Sanskrit and he posts it on Facebook and everybody will think it's coming from the scriptures because it's in Sanskrit. No. This is karmic or fruitive mentality. Just enjoy your life. Eat ghee means by eating ghee is what? Body will become strong, senses will be strong, then you can enjoy these senses as much to the fullest extent as possible. But this was his philosophy, his understanding. And Prabhupada said, this is called ignorance. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is understood that one does not die with annihilation of his body. Annihilation of one body involves changing to another. Therefore, to perform irresponsible activities in the material world is very dangerous. Without knowledge of the spirit, soul, and its transmigration, people are lured by that material energy to engage in many such activities, as if one could become happy simply by dint of material knowledge without reference to spiritual existence. So it is, towards the end, he says, it is a statement of Charvak Muni that one should beg, borrow, or steal money to purchase ghee and enjoy life. Thus, even the greatest atheist of India recommends that one eat ghee, not meat. No one should conceive of human beings eating meat like tigers and dogs, but men have become so degraded that they are just like animals and can no longer claim to have a human civilization. But this is all that's going on in terms of advancement in life, that you have to do this. But it's all ignorance. According to scripture, it's all ignorance. And ignorance will not lead us to higher status of life after death. We'll go down only. Anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
हरे कृष्ण।
प्रभु जी, ये जो अभी हमने जो सुई दे दे चरक मुनि का, इसका ये भी तो मतलब दिस आल्सो वुड बी अ रीजन कि उन्होंने बोला घी, यू मस्ट ईट घी इज इन टर्म्स ऑफ आयुर्वेदिक मेडिसिन्स एंड ऑल।
In terms of eating ghee?
Ghee, huh?
Well,
because
with
in
ghee
Ayurved,
actually,
चरक मुनि इज लाइक वो थे ना, ये आयुर्वेद के वो मेडिसिन्स का जो मेडिसिन्स मतलब उन्होंने वो किया था। So then it could be the reason that this statement मतलब it would be related to the Ayurvedic medicines.
But then he says, "Na, enjoy life, beg, borrow, or steal, eat ghee, because once this body is finished, everything is finished." That's not the conclusion. So even Charvak Muni, he didn't give the right understanding.
Okay.
Okay, Mata. Thank you. You all have a wonderful day.